Self-publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. We're back. It's me, James Blatch. Had a bit of a hiatus and we are going to start ramping things up again during the summer. We've had so many lovely emails from people who've missed us on their treadmills and on their walks. I've just got back from a conference, first one I've been to since Vegas in November, and it was wonderful to be amongst human beings again. We have so much time sat at a desk by ourselves, don't we? And that's what this podcast is going to be about, actually. I'm going to take you through a couple of things. First of all, we're going to talk about the foundation winners, those authors who we're going to support through the next couple of years with some access to resources, including our resources from Reedsy, cash to spend, there to get them on the runway to author success. So I'm going to read you the names of the winners for the 2024 allotments. And I'm also going to talk a bit about the conference that I've been to, which was 20 Books Seville, if you prefer, in Spain. I was really looking forward to getting some sunshine, but we turned up and it was a monsoon, so it was raining for about 2 days solid and cold. But we did have one day of quite nice blue skies and not particularly warm, but a nice look around a really beautiful city. If you've not been to Seville before, I'd definitely add it to your bucket list at some point. But a very interesting conference. I really feel the need to do this podcast because things are moving fast suddenly. I do feel things are changing in indie publishing at the moment. I think that Jo Penn has said this as well, and I chatted to her in Seville, that for me it feels like we've had it our own way for quite a long time. We've been a disruptor in a bigger industry, and now it feels like we're being disrupted by technology, and it's a kind of sink or swim time for a few people. We need to make sure that we are understanding of what's coming along so we can make good decisions. And one of the things obviously I'm going to be talking about, because it was the hot topic in Seville and it will be the hot topic at London Book Fair when I'm going there later today, in fact, is artificial intelligence, AI, and how that's changing things in our industry. So if you're of a mindset that you don't want to go down the AI route, don't want anything to do with it, I'm going to try and disabuse you of that. Not to say you should be using AI in everything, but you should absolutely be understanding what it's doing to our industry to enable you to make good decisions. At the very least, even if it's going to be your personal thing, is look, I just don't want to use those systems. Particularly in things like advertising, I think that's one area where once you understand the impact AI is having, you will think, okay, so that will make my ads more efficient and help me sell more books. And if I choose not to use those workflows and processes, then am I going to fall behind? So that's what we're going to talk about in this podcast episode. And I'm also going to mention our conference, and we have an announcement coming up. I know a lot of you have been waiting to find out who we are going to be featuring in the Self-Publishing Show live in London in June. We're going to find that out next week, but I'm going to give you a little tease about that before we finish today. Okay, so let me get on with this. Let's talk about the foundation winners. So the SPF Foundation, or Learn Self-Publishing Foundation, I guess it is now, as we're changing our name after a few years, time for a refresh, is a recognition that it does take some resource to get going in indie publishing. Now, you can do it very, very cheaply. You can do it bootstrap, but you don't get the best service. And the one area that we think probably you do need a helping hand to finance yourself, for most of us have done this, is editing. Because books benefit so much from editing, and putting out an unedited book, a book that you can no longer see the mistakes in it because you can't see the wood from the trees, which has happened to all of us, could have a damaging effect on an otherwise promising career with everything else being in place for it. So that's the main purpose of the foundations, to give people that those resources, which is why we tie in with Reedsy.com, the place where I've got all my editors from in the past, and probably will continue to do so in the future, and others. And they get access to our courses, so they know how to market, hopefully with their books, and in some cases how to write them as well. So all of that is packaged together and handed out, and we have how many? Let me count this. I think it must be at least 10 now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It is 10 awards we've given now. We started off with just us giving a couple of places away, and then a few authors contacted us, people like Lucy Score, Mark Recklow, James Rossone, a few organisations, obviously. Oh, and Craig Martell, I should mention as well. A few other organisations came in, primarily Reedy, which really underpins the foundation process, and Written Word Media, the home of Hello Books, and Free Booksy and Bargain Booksy. They also sponsor a place. So without further ado, let me announce to you who has been awarded a foundation place for 2024. And the first one is quite a hard surname for me to say. I've tried this before. But it's Bonnie Poirier. I think it's Poirier. Sounds French. And she is one of our choices from here at Learn Self-Publishing. And the second one from us is Lisa Michelle. Congratulations to Bonnie and Lisa for those Learn Self-Publishing places. Craig Martell, I mentioned, who Craig's such a great servant of the indie community, stepped down from organising 20 Books Vegas. We'll talk about that perhaps before the end of the show as well, because I have been chatting to the new director of the conference that will take over from 20 Books. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Craig Martell's author who's been selected is Damien Boys. Congratulations, Damien, to you. And Lucy Score, who's had just a phenomenal year and is such a great writer, and another, I think I couldn't imagine a better ambassador for independent publishing over the decades, the last decade or so, than Lucy. She's just done everything right. She has the right attitude. She works incredibly hard, but she does it with a smile on her face. I think celebrating someone's success. She celebrates everyone else's success so much, picks out good news stories every week for her readers. If you're in her Facebook group or on her newsletter list, you'll know what I'm talking about. But she's had a phenomenal year, and congratulations, Lucy. She's sponsored 2 places for 2024, and they have gone to Michelle Carter and Jodie Rolls. Jodie Rolls is a really cool name, by the way. Sounds like a superhero. Now, Reedy themselves have picked out 2 authors to sponsor through 2024 as well, and they are Joe Havens and Violet Fenn. Congratulations to Joe and Violet. We have 3 more to announce. Written Word Media's author for 2024 is Katie Brown. Well done, Katie. Mark Recklow, he was in Seville last week, and same as ever, Mark spoke to the crowd very enthusiastically. He has a very motivating speech, and if you've been to Self-Publishing Live in the past, you will have known that when Mark speaks, it's a highlight of the day. But he's somebody who basically says, look, you can do it, and it's up to you. What happens tomorrow is largely about what you do today. And I know it's a kind of, not a cliche, but it's a message we hear from time to time, but you can't hear it enough, really. And for those of us who often feel that events overtake us, it's worth reminding ourselves that to a very large degree, we are still in charge of a lot of things. We can make a difference to our own lives, even if it does sometimes feel out of control. Anyway, Mark's author to see through 2024 is Luke Zekin. So well done, Luke. I think it's Zekin or Zetchin, but I suspect it's a silent H, Zekin. Well done, Luke. And finally, James Rossone. So James Rossone, somebody who served in the United States military, who went into operational environments, who had, I always had this conversation actually over the weekend. My father was born in 1931, so he was a kid in the Second World War. In fact, he enjoyed the Second World War because it was exciting for them to have the Battle of Britain raging above them in the Isle of Wight where he lived. And when a Messerschmitt was shot down by a hurricane, they would get on their bikes and race to the scene and try and grab a piece. It sounds very macabre, doesn't it? But that's what young teenage boys, 13, 14-year-olds did in the Second World War, try and grab bits of memorabilia from it. And it reminded me of something that my father said to me, possibly my mother, because their generation who they were working with, the ones who are 5, 6, 7 years older, so close in age, they were the ones who fought in the war as young men. And my dad said to me, some people have good wars and some people have bad wars. And it wasn't talked about in the 1950s and 60s. It was a stiff upper lip. The war films were all full of heroes. They didn't really touch on PTSD. We know now there must have been shed loads of it around, people silently suffering. James Rossone has done a lot to shine a light on post-traumatic stress disorder and recovering from combat and recovering from those service careers. It doesn't apply to everyone who's served, but it certainly applies to some, and it applies to him, and James talks very openly about that. Writing has been his way out of that. But what a phenomenally successful writer he's been. Him and his wife Miranda, who do a really great job. And they sponsor a place, and that has gone to Anton Kukal. So Anton Kukal, well done. Anton, very well deserved for you. So they are our foundation winners for 2024. So they're going to get a package coming from us that will include, I think, $2,500 of spend at reedy.com, access to our courses and lots of other goodies depending on who their individual sponsor is. Okay, so let's talk about 20 Books Seville. So 20 Books Seville, organised by Enrique, and I remember meeting him for the first time at Madrid a couple of years ago, and he's somebody who's been in traditional publishing, but as soon as he started picking up how self-publishing was growing, he wanted a part of it, as all good organisations do. They are pivoting towards indie publishing. People like Bookfold, who've been a traditional publisher in Peterborough for years, and suddenly are all eyes lit up at the burgeoning self-publishing business, and they know where the future is. So 20 Books Seville was created. I hadn't realised this until I arrived, but it's actually in a historic railway shed. I mean, it's a huge railway shed, like an old terminal building, just outside the centre of Seville, but very walkable. It's not a huge city, which was wonderful for me because I'm a bit of a train spotter. I'm a geek about that, and it was like an 1860s, I would say, very similar to King's Cross and Pancras in here in London. Not quite as grand as the fantastic Art Deco stations you get in places like Washington DC and New York, but nonetheless functional and bit of form there as well. So in that shed, which was quite cold, I should say, because the Seville sunshine didn't turn up for us. They have 3 tracks. One of them is in Spanish. They're all done in cinemas, actually. So they have 2 cinemas that are English tracks, and you can choose between 2 sessions at any one time over 2 days. And then there's a 3rd track, which is all done in Spanish. That's great to rub shoulders with Spanish authors and marketers as well over the weekend. So in the tracks that were English language, obviously the ones I went to, AI was dominant. I mean, 1 or 2 of the sessions were almost purely about AI, but all the other sessions, to one degree or another, mentioned that aspect of what's coming along. So Jo Penn spoke, and she spoke in pretty stark terms about this, that things are changing. I mean, we've always said Jo is ahead of the game on AI, and we used to say she's probably 5 years ahead of the game. You don't really need to pay too much attention at this stage. She's enthusiastic about AI. She's been talking about it for the best part of 15 years, but it's coming to fruition in 5 years. And then suddenly that became, well, maybe she's a year or 2 ahead of her time. And then by her own admission in this talk, she's barely keeping up now because things are moving so quickly. And Jo actually said that she'd done her presentation and locked it down like 10 days before, and it was already out of date because Claude 3 was out and it was changing very quickly what's happening. And so the takeaway, I think, from those sessions, and it's not just Jo, Chris Banks from Pro Writing Aid, which has always used a sort of level of machine learning, is now clearly thinking about how AI is going to impact them. So it's not just... The overall message, I think, is that you need to be aware of what's happening and what's changing because, and it sounds like a cliche, but you're just going to be left behind. So, for instance, when it comes to advertising, monitoring advertising is both a human and a data thing. So we use data, we make human decisions. AI is what's going to bridge that gap. Will it completely take the role of humans? Probably the answer to that is yes, it will, and it might do it quicker than we think. Now, if you haven't been using some of those AI workflows to help you monitor and make decisions in advertising, then suddenly you're going to be really left behind in a year or so, and AI is very quickly gearing up campaigns. And instead of having a system that can, for instance, look at a campaign and make a decision about optimizing in every 2 or 3 days, AI will be doing it 2 or 3 times a second. It'll be looking at those results and it'll be learning itself what works and what doesn't. And so you can imagine those campaigns are going to be ultimately very efficient. And if you're still waiting a couple of days because of the time limits that we have as humans to make your decisions about making changes in campaigns, killing campaigns if they're not successful, scaling them up if they are successful, all those things. If you're doing that every 2 or 3 days and AI is doing it every 2 or 3 times a minute, then you're going to be left behind. And so it's understanding that. Now, you don't have to panic at this stage. In fact, a really positive message that Jo gave in her talk is that you are not too late. You're absolutely not too late. This is still where and when it's just ahead of the curve. Most people listening to this podcast and listening to me talk will think, I don't know where to start with this. Well, that's fine. That is absolutely fine. We are in a good place now just to start paying attention to various things that come along and help us. I think that for me, the other area, which is the elephant in the room, really is AI in writing. And this is such a difficult one, because the essence of what we do as writers is that human aspect of it. Well, the good news about this is you don't have to be angry about people using AI to generate text in their books. You have to think that the human element, the human suffering, whatever you want to describe it, that we bring to our books is more important now than it ever has been. And that this is the one area I think AI is always going to struggle to compete with us. So differentiate yourself in your writing, bring yourself, and there's a great book Jo's written about finding the darkness within you. I'll dig out the actual title in a second. And all of that comes together in the most complex way possible, which is only possible in the human brain, much more complex than anything AI is going to be anywhere near in the next probably 1,000 years. The brain is well beyond that. So we have that at our advantage. We have our own AI there, if you like, or organic intelligence, we should say, though we can use that to be different. But that doesn't mean that you are the devil if you use an AI tool to help your writing process. And that doesn't necessarily mean generating scenes for you, but it does, for instance, mean an AI going through a scene you've just written and telling you where the pace drops off or where the repetition is, a kind of first line of proof editing. That's a kind of bare minimum I think a lot of people will be doing. And I do think this is the elephant in the room, that if you're writing and sitting in the corner of the room that you're writing in is somebody who is brilliant at reading through your script and telling you that's good, that's not so good, would you for any reason in the world never speak to them, never give them a script, and never have an exchange with them to help your manuscript become better? You wouldn't think about that twice. But that is AI. So take away the fact it's a machine and not a person. You would use a person to help you, so why wouldn't you use the machine to help you? And of course, the other side of that is if you're really anti-AI and you're particularly angry that it's replacing authors, I put that in inverted commas, because people are using it to generate entire novels. Well, you're absolutely right. People are using it to generate entire novels. Amazon recently announced that you couldn't upload more than 3 novels a day. 3 novels a day. Now, do you think Amazon did that because they think in the future people might use AI to generate more than 3 novels a day? No, they did it because people are using AI to generate 1,000 novels a day now and are uploading it. So they've put the brakes on that and the kibosh on that. Now, I don't have inside information from Amazon, but I'm just telling you that's very likely the case. So people are using generative AI to create books as we're speaking now. So if you are not even going to improve and streamline your process using some of those tools, I think that's where you put yourself at a disadvantage. Now, if like me, that writing is something you look forward to, the pureness of writing, something you look forward to, and it helps your mental health, and I think a lot of us probably do it for that, then of course you're never going to be the person who just generates scenes at a time. And going back to what I started with, because of the organic nature of our brain and the human suffering and the life we've lived, that will never be as good as what you create. But there's a happy medium there of using some of these tools to help you create a better manuscript. And that's probably the gap that you need to think about bridging now. And you can make a decision about how far you want to go on that front. I've started experimenting with it. I hadn't been particularly, advertising is more my focus, but I did start experimenting with it over the weekend. So for instance, I had a chase scene, a pretty normal chase scene on the embankment in I'm writing a spy espionage at the moment. But I'd written it in about 5 sentences, maybe not even that. It was a paragraph basically. This guy chased the woman down, shoulder barged her to the ground. As she spun over, he looked at her and realised to his horror that this was the woman he was having an affair with. So it's just a spy espionage thing. So that was it. But I wrote it in about 4 sentences, and I can't remember why. Just because I was running out of time, and I had the idea in my head, so I just wanted to write that down, as we all do this, don't we? I left it in Scrivener, knowing I'll come back to it. Well, I didn't come back to it. I carried on with the story, and knowing at some point I'm going to go back and do that scene. So I thought, okay, let me try this. So Claude 3 is out. It's a new version of Claude, one of the many AIs. There's ChatGPT, perhaps the most famous, and then Bard, Pseudowrite, and so on. So there's others, but Claude 3 was the brand new one that Joe was talking about. Being a bit of a game changer. I mean, we get a new game is changed every 2 days on AI. And so I just fed in the 25,000 words of the book so far, including that brief version of the scene. And then I said to Claude, look, that scene needs writing properly. Can you have a go? And it wrote a 2 to 3 page version of that scene that was tense, had good pacing on it. It wasn't really me. And I didn't really want it like that. I wanted to rewrite it myself, but it gave me some good ideas. It pointed me in the way that I should have a sort of break in the chase. It's not something, you watch films and you realise that's how they do it. Things suddenly run out. They lose somebody and it looks like all's lost. It's like a mini version of the whole story where they have their dark moment. So you can build that into a small chase scene and so on. So all of that was helpful. And for me, now I then rewrote the scene because having read that, I wanted to immediately get on with it. I've now written that scene, and there's absolutely elements in that scene that were generated by AI for me as ideas, not necessarily word for word. And so that's the sort of thing we're talking about, as I would say, and I know this is controversial, probably risking this, but I think that's the kind of minimum that writers should be thinking about how we're going to use AI. Think of it as a writing aid. I mean, there was Chris Banks from Pro Writing Aid, and Chris had a quick chat with him actually in the hotel before he left town. But Chris is somebody who's been using machine learning as built into Pro Writing Aid, and he's been talking about doing something more than that over the years. And suddenly he's got this, the technology has caught up with where his mind was. So I think PWA is going to be changing quite a lot in the next year or so. He's actually coming to our conference in June, and we'll talk about this and Pro Writing Aid, so you can talk to Chris yourself and learn how to use it. But I don't like the idea of people generating large chunks of their book and uploading it. And there was a big award winner, wasn't there, who's controversially pointed out that was, when Under Pressure, said something like, I was careful with the wording, that 5% of the book was probably word for word generated by AI. And actually, if you read between the lines, 95% of it might have been slightly rewritten by her, but the 5% was generated. I don't like the idea of that. You probably don't like the idea of that. But this is where we come back to that organic matter that we have between our ears. Is going to make the difference. But you can use the organic matter, the very best of the organic matter, that bringing in that suffering, bringing in that theme, bringing in those moments that you want to write because it's getting it off your chest, and that's the essence of good books, right? You can use that as well as making the system easier for you by using some aids as you go along. Anyway, something to think about, something to discuss. One more area from all the sessions I went to, the other area that was very interesting was Amazon ads. Now that was a session from David Beers and Cameron Scott. Now you might know Cameron Scott's name because he did a webinar for us recently. He has a something that sits on top of Amazon ads to help you run it called Merch Jar. There's another one called Books Fly, which Sarah Usera is developing. She was at the conference as well. And David Beers is somebody who runs a shed load of ads for LMBPN, which is Michael Andeley's publishing empire, which is a huge publishing empire. And so he's got a huge amount of experience in running ads. And I had the two of them talking about Amazon ads. And I think what's come across for me, and I've been talking to Cameron Scott for probably 6 months now, is that I think there's a great benefit from somebody like Cameron who's worked on Amazon ads from non-books up until now, like people printing T-shirts, merch, merchandise and so on. There's a great benefit for someone like him coming in, looking at us and saying, okay, so maybe you should be doing some of the best of his old world and also obviously trying to incorporate the changing nature of advertising at the moment. And one of the things that Cameron pointed out straight away, it's something we know very well but haven't really solved, is that a lot of the metrics we get given to us on the Amazon Ads platform are useless. I mean, ACOS, which is the cost of sale, it's 100% is basically break even, and 150% means you're losing money, and 50% means you're making profit. But none of those really work, because first of all, we tend to only advertise the first book in series, and we can sell that even at a loss and still make a profit because of read through. Second of all, it doesn't include paid reads. It doesn't include the royalty. I mean, you only get 70% of that sale. So you have to, I mean, there's a lot of things to factor in just to get the actual information. And it's actually ultimately impossible to get that clean information. So what Scott has done, working with David and actually working with us as well, is he's developing tools to enable you to put in some information at the beginning of your process to suddenly make that return you get from Amazon make more sense to you. And if you can work out the campaigns that are actually making you money and the ones that have crossed that line and are no longer efficient, then you know where to put your effort in. So that's a game changer. That's a huge thing. Now, it's quite complicated, all of this, and it was the most complicated session going to. We were talking about LTV, the lazy LTV method. I'm looking at my notes from this. I mean, they go on forever. Ad impact multipliers and stuff like this. And if you were on the webinar recently, you'll know that this is quite complicated, and Cameron tried to sort of simplify it for us, but it is something worth focusing on. So if Amazon ads is still a bit of an Achilles heel for you, and it is for me, I've got to be honest, Facebook ads is I'm much more comfortable in that environment. But keeping an eye on that webinar, watching that webinar through again, probably if you watched it the first time, I think is very useful. And what I'm going to do after this show is I'm going to repackage that webinar, and I'm going to put it onto the SPF University so that we can have it there for posterity. And we'll get Cameron Scott in at some other point to update us on that. But also, I'll give you a link in a minute to go somewhere to get a download from Cameron that includes a calculator. So he's done a lot of this work for you. Just put in some information, he'll teach you how to use it, and that calculator will give you these new ACOS, blended ACOS he calls it, which is a new figure, which is your actual ACOS. And then you can also have a look at MerchJar. As I say, it is quite a very impressive system, sits on top of your Amazon ads and shows you all the information, breaks it down, and will automatically tweak campaigns for you if you want to set up some rules for that. So if you go to, here's the URL for all that stuff, you go to learnselfpublishing.com /merchjar, MERCHJAR. Then you'll get an email back that will have a link to the webinar if you haven't seen it yet to watch that, and a link to the MerchJar page that Cameron has set up just for Learn Self-Publishing and Self-Publishing Show listeners. So you get a discount on MerchJar, but you also get that calculator and some other resources as well. So yeah, learnselfpublishing.com /merchjar, MERCHJAR. I will set that up. Yeah, so it was good, a good conference, good to chat to human beings. A lot's happened in the last 6 months. I sort of felt I could decompress a little bit amongst friends and have a relax over a drink and some really excellent food in the evening. Had a lot of tapas. I think I was probably tapped out on tapas after about 2 days. There's something, I don't know, it's because I'm British maybe, that, you know, it's a bit, there's a lot of uncertainty in tapas. You know, the food comes to the meal, you don't know 100% what it is or 100% whether it's for you or not. And that uncertainty made me feel uncomfortable, I've got to be honest. So after 2 days, I did insist we found a steakhouse where when you order the food, it comes to you and you eat it, which is like a traditional way of eating food. But I think tapas has been misappropriated by us. I think tapas should be at the bar, few drinks, couple of nibbles before you then go out and eat. And we've turned tapas into an entire meal where you sit down and order tapas. And I maybe I'm overthinking this, but let's park that for now. Right, we have announcements to make in the next few days about our conference in June. So I have a schedule which is just tiny bit moved after my couple of days in Seville, because I realised that some areas we needed to cover. But we have, I think it's now 18 sessions over 2 days, so it's going to be busy. Some of the sessions will just be half an hour. We're going to have lots of breaks as well, so you have plenty of time to network. and meet and shake hands, and which is the main thing, and of course the big party on the first evening, on the Tuesday evening. And we have some big name authors. So we've been releasing the names this week. You may have seen in our group that E.L. James and Lucy Score are going to be there. Two of the biggest names in romance writing. Erica James and Lucy, couldn't be more delighted to have them on stage. So they're going to be on stage together. Imagine that. Imagine E.L. James and Lucy Score next to each other, both talking about how to hook readers. So I think a lot of their experience in the last few years has been dealing with multi-million sales and film rights and global success, which has been slightly crazy, and hopefully will be of note for you and me in the future. But what is of note now is how they've written their books and how they've hooked their readers, and how they make their readers turn the page. And I think picking their brains on that is going to be the most useful thing. So that's what we're going to focus on with Erica and Lucy Score. So they're going to be in the sessions. We have lots of other speakers as well. We're rolling out those names now, so I'm not going to say them all now because we may not have revealed them all at this stage. But if you keep an eye on our Facebook group, and I'm going to do a special on the conference in a couple of weeks as well, where we'll just go through the sessions, exactly when they are, who's speaking, and what sort of things you're going to get out of it. So if you haven't made a decision to come to the conference yet, we do know that having announced E.L. James, we're going to have a glut of ticket sales. We expected that, and Lucy Score, people definitely want to come and see those too. So you're probably better sooner rather than later jumping off to the page to sign up, which is learnselfpublishing.com/SPS live. That's learnselfpublishing.com/SPS live. Pick up your ticket. We're not doing single day tickets this year. We can't really do it. It's too complicated because of the fire limits in the room, and your ticket will include the party as well in the evening. So it's a nice simple ticket, one ticket you get. So we're going to keep the early bird going just for a couple more weeks, because we've been busy and we haven't taken it off yet. So rather than suddenly take it off unannounced, we're going to give people a couple of weeks on those early bird prices. Okay, right. Well, I've got lots on. I'm going to get on a train and go to the London Book Fair in a minute. And so next time I'm doing a podcast, I'll tell you if I learned anything there. I suspect I will. I'm going to be talking about Vinci Books, which is my new publishing project. So Fuse Books has become Vinci Books. And excitingly, we've just started sending out letters now to people who've submitted, or emails, I should say, so that we can get going on that. And that's an area where I'm really going to be focusing and drilling down on advertising and moving with the time. So we're already talking to people at Google about the AI assistants to help us run ads more efficiently. So I promise you will be the first to know when we find something that you do need to actually start implementing. At the moment, it's a bit research and theoretical, but things are moving very quickly on that front. Okay, well, it's been lovely being back. I hope you've enjoyed your treadmill run. It's been 34 minutes, so that's decent, probably 5k under your belt. Yeah, if you've been on your dog walk or sitting in your house, whatever. I know people, I love hearing where people are when they listen to the podcast, so you can always come and tell me. If you see me in London, obviously, come and say hello. And I'll be back shortly with a little bit, oh, sorry, I'm on a lip if you're watching on YouTube. I wonder how long that's been there. Anyway, I don't know. Right, that's it from me. I feel at waffle stage. Look, I can even do waffling banter just by myself, so you won't be without it. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you next week. All that remains for me to say is a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/self-publishing show. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.